Hello everyone and welcome to another tutorial. This one is going to be in Photoshop and I have two images here that we're going to be producing some light rays or God rays as they sometimes get called. This is a forest scene that we'll be doing, and I've also got this scene here which is a room scene. I'll be showing two different methods. The first method will be a lot more detailed and arguably will give a much better result. However, for our game renders and things like that, sometimes quick and easy is adequate, which is what I'll be showing on this image here. So before I get started, as usual, a big thank you to all of my supporters, no matter what platform you're on and what platform you support me on. I do appreciate it. I'm actually getting close to 500 followers on Twitter, which I never thought would happen. And I think when we do eventually pass that milestone, I will need to do something special to mark it. So let's have a look at this image. So straight away you can see that there is a sun hidden behind the trees here, a very bright sun, and there is in fact some rays coming off of it already. However, for the rest of the image, it's that there are no rays at all, especially down here and around here. First thing we need to do is select the actual highlight areas. So the bright areas here, especially around the sun and around here. And to do that, if you go to select color range, and then we want to go to highlights, and you'll see what it's done is it's anything that's bright has been highlighted with white. See, especially there, and anything that isn't is highlighted with black. Now I've already got it set on black matte. You probably would have it as set as none. So if you change that to black matte, what that does is it actually shows you the colors on here, which allows you to see a little bit more detail. So if we take the fuzziness right the way down, and we can adjust the range so you can see more or less. Now we don't want it to we don't want to lose our highlights, but when you're happy with about where it is, you then increase the fuzziness, and what that does is it just adds a little bit more of the light, the highlights back to the area. And actually I think where I had it before, the 20% is about right. But that should do it. And what that's done is that has selected all of the highlight areas. So what we want to do is put that onto a new layer. So to do that in Photoshop, this is the PC version, so it's Control J, and that places all of those highlights on a new layer. So now we've got our new layer. If we double click, we'll call it highlights. And the other thing we need to do before we do anything with this is convert it to a smart object. Okay, so with our highlights layer, we're going to make the highlights blur, and this will give us our rays. So if we go to filter, blur, and we want radial blur, we want it to go to the zoom, and my computer can handle it, but depending on how powerful your computer is, you might want to start with draft before going up to best, but mine can handle it on best. And we change the amount all the way up to 100, and you see this gives us our lines, and we want to take this point and we want to position it to about where the sun is on our image. So about there looks good. If we hit OK, you can see we've got the lines coming out. You can see I was just a little bit off from where the sun is. So to edit that, we just double click on the radial blur. We can see that we're just about there. So we just want to move it up and over just a little bit. Say OK to that. There we go. Almost there. Think down there. There we go. So we now have some very strong light rays coming out from the sun. That looks pretty good, but we're not quite done. What we need to do is we're actually going to duplicate the highlights layer to make the rays a little bit stronger, especially down here. And to do that, just have the highlights selected, press Ctrl J, and you can see we've now duplicated, and it's a much stronger effect. As a consequence of that, having strong light rays close to the sun makes sense, but where they are out at the edges here, especially over the trees, they're a little bit too sharp, a little bit too strong. So what we can do, if we hold down Shift and select both highlight layers and right click, convert to smart object, what that does is it takes both layers and converts both of them to a smart object. This smart group will allow you to edit things, and if you wanted to edit any individual property, you just need to double click and you can see it will open up in a new document to allow you to edit the individual layers. We don't need that for now, so we'll close that and go back to our main image. Let's name this just highlights. What we're going to do, we're going to blur around. To do this, go to Filter, Blur Gallery, Field Blur. And what this does, this allows us to set some points that blur out. Now this initial point we've got, we actually want to move that to the middle because we don't want it to be blurred around the sun. So we take the blur all the way down and that will sharpen this area. Now we can create some other points, for example there, and actually 15 is probably about right, and there, and let's do up there. And what these do is these will blur the extremities whilst keeping the image sharper in the middle. When you're happy with that, click OK, and we've applied our blur. Okay, the next thing to do is to have our highlights, and we're going to set the blend mode to screen, and this will make the light areas much lighter, whereas on normal you can see that it darkens the areas. We actually want to lighten them. You can see on the extremities, especially the tree and the tree here, that because we've now made it screen blend mode, it's a lot lighter, and we don't really want that. We want to soften these down and remove a lot of the sharpness here. Now to do that, I think the first thing, always double check that you've got black and white. Have highlights selected and click on the mask there. And if you select a brush, we want the brush size nice and big, which it is, that's good. And if you click, you see it removes from that area. I would take the flow right the way down and just soften the area just slightly, just to take a little bit of the extremity, a little bit of the extreme light back a little bit. When you're happy with the look, we can move on. One of the things you may notice is that these highlights, our rays, are white, whereas the sun is quite distinctly yellow. So we can add some colour to our rays. To do that, all we need to do is select an adjustment layer, solid colour, and a nice yellow, slightly orangey yellow, something like that should do. And then what you want to do is you hold down Alt and put your mouse over the line, and that will link it to the layer below. So you click, and you can see we've now got a lot more colour in those rays. If you wanted to change the colour, just have to double click on it and thinking a little bit darker. There we go. Looking pretty good. Next thing we're going to do is add some highlights to the ground area and here where the sunlight is touching. To do that, we just go to our adjustment layer, curves. We take this up, and of course it's yellow light, and the opposite would be blue, so we bring the blue down a bit. That gives us a nice vibrant colour. Make sure you've got the layer mask selected and press Ctrl I. That creates a mask. You want to have the brush. We want to swap these around, so if you hit X, it will swap those colours around. The flow 41 is about right. You see, you could start adding in a little bit more of the highlight colour. Now this brush is a little bit big, so I'm going to make the brush a little bit smaller to do along the edges where the light hits. Okay, so when you're happy with the image, view over here, if you double click, that'll open up your blending options. And where it says underlaying layers, if you move this across, you can see what's happening is that some of the darkness is creeping in. And if you hold Alt and click, it will separate these layers, allowing you to adjust them further. So if we bring that right the way up, you can see that the blend is a lot more natural. You can also increase this, just so we're getting some highlights where the sun's hitting. And when you're happy with the effect, there you have it. You've got your light rays, you've got your highlights, and overall, the scene looks much better. I'll show you how it was before by just turning all these layers off. That was before, and this is after. A much brighter and more vibrant scene. So let's move on to the quick and easy way. The way to do this is we need to select the colour that we're going to use. Now this is a white colour, so you want to use the brightest now. As it turns out, it is white. Make sure you have a brush selected. Decide which angle the light is going to be coming from. So it's going to be coming in a downward angle. Create a new layer and just draw. We want to change the flow up to 100. And just draw rays coming down from the window. Different lengths. Don't go outside of this area. You want to use different lengths. This. A few more here. And that should probably do it. A few little ones helps. And then all we need to do is we go to filter, blur, motion blur. And in fact, this has already been set at about the right angle. You want to set the distance all the way up to 2000 and change the angle of the blur so that it's coming from the window. There we go. That actually looks pretty decent. Now you see, we've got some nice subtle light rays coming from the window. What you need to keep an eye on, if I turn this background layer off, that won't help, but is where you've got rays that just wouldn't be coming from. And the way you can fix that, 100% flow, is just literally delete them from that part. Let's have a bigger brush. And where they shouldn't be going underneath, so where it's darker, you can get rid of them. Same as above the window. On the layer, change it to screen, and there you have your light rays. If you wanted them to be more pronounced, again, select the layer, Control J, and you can see a much stronger effect. And you could even change the feel of that just a little bit. There we go. One method takes 20 minutes, give or take. The other, 2 minutes. Arguably, both are probably acceptable. That's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found that helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.